Should Captain America be allowed to lift Mjolnir? Should Hulk be a smarty pants? Should Thor be a fatty? Should female Avengers get paid as much as the male Avengers? Wait, did you put that in there? Should Elizabeth Olsen go out with me? That was mine. Should Hawkeye get his own movie? Well, that's a definite no. Avengers Endgame. The elevator pitch. Think Back to the Future meets Star Trek 4. The Avengers travel back in time to retrieve these MacGuffins in the past that will fix things in the present. And producer Kevin Feige asked, can it be wacky, like Back to the Future, where they're sneaking around their past selves and suddenly meeting their own young father or something? Oh yes, nod the writers enthusiastically, aiming to plagiarize. I mean, please. Feige continues, will they be whales? The writers look at each other. Stutter, you mean like in Star Trek 4? Feige squints at them from above. They effuse. Of course there'll be whales, but big mechanical alien whales that swim around the skies of New York. Then Kevin Feige reached his floor, put his pants back on, and greenlit Avengers Endgame. Don't worry, millennial Marvelites. It might blatantly rip off two classic comedy movies, but it's still all about the punching, and we still get that idiotic tableau of two technological factions running at each other like they're warring tribes in Braveheart, even though half of them can fly, half of them are magic, and both sides have firepower that can burn down continents. No, let's run toward each other and punch dance so we can look legit in posters. For the SJW millennials, there's the emasculation of the two strongest Avengers, Hulk and Thor. And for the woman-empowering millennials, you get the cringy scene of all the estrogen Avengers banding together to transport one MacGuffin to another MacGuffin. And leave us not forget all the magic, who cares, you. But Dunmore, you say, why then does Avengers Endgame score 7 out of 10 stars? Pretty high for a film that takes us for idiots. Well, Avengers Endgame is sold on its performances alone. If it weren't for the filmmakers, directors Anthony and Joe Russo, from a screenplay by Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely, if it weren't for them concentrating on the people at the heart of this CGI-glutted, magic-filled, sprawling epic, the film would die a horrible, gurgling death. Marvel banked on its stars being good enough actors to elevate what is essentially a kiddies superhero movie into a poignant adult movie about loss, family, and redemption. And grounding the movie around the performances is the best thing Marvel could have done. Because let's face it, the rest of it makes zero sense. While Endgame retains the tone of the series, it's not a standalone movie. You cannot possibly understand the plot if you haven't watched at least 10 other movies from the Marvel Cinematic Underpants over the last decade. Marvel Studios' tactic is stupid and canny at the same time. Stupid because this film will lose its referential clout and won't make sense when viewed over time. And canny because Marvel actually conned everyone on Earth into thinking we needed to see all 22 MCU films starting way back with Iron Man in 2008 to not miss out on being a part of world culture. If you are not up to speed on where the MCU left our heroes, then the first thing you need to do is write a letter to Marvel and apologize. Endgame opens with Archer Clint Barton, Jeremy Renner, never once called by his super name, Hawkeye, in all 4 Avengers movies, sharing a day with his family. They disappear. We figure, oh, this is the moment Thanos snapped in Avengers Infinity War. But hang on, so while half the Avengers were in Wakanda battling Venoms, and half were on planet Gloomy Pants trying to smell the glove, this rube was having a family barbecue? Even with his house arrest, did no one call and say, hey, we can sure use your minimal input here. Everything is so pear-shaped, even some fey archery would help. Marvel thinks no one is paying attention. And the way everyone keeps lauding these plot hole-ridden movies as the greatest movies ever made, it seems like Marvel is right. Next, we see Tony Iron Stark Downey Man Jr. lost in space with Nebula, Karen Gillan. What are they doing there? Playing tiddlywinks, of course, while their air runs out. Yes, but what are they doing there? Oh, you never watched the last movie? Well, you see, he was on this planet when the thing and the big thing and then the Ferris wheel and it doesn't matter. Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, saves them. Thank you, Deus Ex Marvella. Before anyone can say, what the actual hell is going on, Captain Marvel is back at Avengers HQ telling the Avengers, let's kill Thanos. They say, okay, because no criminals deserve a fair trial in Avengers world. Just go straight to the execution. I mean, they're not called the Justicers, are they? In the previous movie, Infinity War, the Chinballian Thanos, Josh Brolin, had collected 6 Infinity Stones, which gave him power to wipe out half the life in the universe with one snap of his fingers. He did it for the resources, for the love, for the boys. Well, many superheroes died, as well as half the life in the universe, but we don't care about things we can't see. Precipitating fanboys crying themselves to sleep on their Spider-Man bedsheets and burning their autographed first-issue plastic bag comic books in sympathy, not realizing that Marvel would never keep its properties dead for long, or the dolls would stop selling. Early in this first act, the Avengers find Thanos and try to make him restore all life. But Thanos had destroyed the only means of doing so, the stones. So Thor, Chris Hemsworth, does what social media was whining for him to do from the beginning: behead Thanos.
5 years later.
The Earth is a garbage dump. Stadiums silent, streets bare, people haggard from their losses. Though they don't show the benefits of life halved. Freeways unjammed, closer seats to your favorite band, less morons in customer service to deal with. Basically, a better world. Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, Chris Evans, is running a support group, and Tony Iron Stark Downey Man Jr. has settled down with Pepper, Gwyneth Paltrow, and a cute as hell little daughter, Lexi Rabe, who loves him 3000. Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, trapped in the quantum realm since the movie Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018, is brought back by a rat. Thank you, Deus Ex Marvella. He tells Cap and Natasha, aka Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, that they can use quantum mechanics to go back to a time before the snap, bring the Infinity Stones back to the present, and restore all life. Cap says, "You're not talking time travel, are you?" And Scott says, "Oh, no. Yes. Thank you, Monty Python's Flying Circus." You see, millennials, not only is the plot unoriginal, so are the jokes. So they get the band back together. Rocket, Bradley Cooper, has been hanging here on Earth since his intergalactic pals all turned to dust. Bruce Banner, aka Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, is now Professor Hulk. That's a thing in the comics. He's big and green, yet peachy keen. Not Hawkeye is found killing Japanese gangsters under his new epithet, Not Ronin. Thor is rooming with his bras from Ragnarok, Korg, Taika Waititi, and special effects worm Meek, and suffering PTSD playing video games and pigging on pizza and beer, hair grown long and dreadlocked, and wearing a fat suit almost as bad as the fat suit in Thinner. the Avengers lay out the time heist idea to Tony Ironstock Downey Man Jr., but he's still having a lover's tiff with Cap because even I don't remember what his grudge is about, and I've seen all the live-action cartoons for kids. MCU movies. Tony Ironstock Downey Man Jr. vetoes the idea, explaining how time travel is impossible, mentioning all the movies they're about to rip off. Then he works out time travel after dinner.
Thank you, Deus Ex Mavella.
And everyone dresses in matching pajamas and goes flying into the quantum realm to reenact Back to the Future 2. Meanwhile, Captain Marvel, who was teased in 2 films as the one most likely to bitch slap Thanos, has buggered off somewhere. As Marvel Studios used magic who cares you in the last film, now that all-purpose device is replaced with time travel who cares you. So the Avengers used their pajamas, which they call quantum suits. And why must they wear those suits? It's time travel, who cares? You. No, those suits are linked to their nano bracelets. How do those bracelets link to the present? It's time travel, who cares? You. No, the bracelets use Pym particles. How? It's time travel, who cares? You. No. The Pym particles are enabling them to time travel because that's the nature of Pym particles.
Thank you, 1.21 gigawatts.
So the Avengers travel to various points in recent history at 88 miles per hour and steal all the stones before Thanos acquires them, waking that quantum dimension until someone's lying on the floor, face down, ass up. Now, the time travel element, it's funny and interesting, and the conundrums played well, with Tony Ironstock Downey Man Jr. being the straight man, Bruce his comic foil, and Ant-Man the patsy. However, its introduction to the MC universe is a cop-out, because it ruins everyone's previous redemptions and sacrifices from their respective standalone movies. For example, though Thor is doubting himself as a man and hero, with Hemsworth doing a truly remarkable job as a guilt-ridden, regretful slob, he needs sulk no more, as traveling back in time will nullify all those regrets, negating their worth in his growth as a character. Apply this device across the board to each character's regrets, and you realize that if plots can be undone by the very company that wrote them in the first place, it's no better than George Lucas rejiggering Star Wars to make Greedo shoot first. Cap will actually use this device to cancel out his regrets in a poignant final scene that will mean all the emotion we invested in Cap trying to get back to his lost love in Captain America: The First Avenger was for naught. Because time travel, who cares? You! Endgame trips and hits its head on fan service when the Avengers start Marty McFlying through time. Ant-Man and Tony Ironstock Downey Man Jr. land in 2012 New York, and we see the Avengers movie play out from different angles. Marvel started doing this in an exceptional manner in Spider-Man: Homecoming in 2017, where we saw Spidey's private footage of the airport battle. It's very cool, but treading awfully close to that movie with the DeLorean. And Tony Ironstock Downey Man Jr. runs into Howard Stark, his dad as a young man. What are the odds? So did Marty. It's very touching, with Howard, John Slattery de-aged, speaking of his soon-to-be-born son, meaning, of course, Tony Ironstock Downey Man Jr. He's not even born yet, but there's nothing I wouldn't do for him. I leaked. How about you? Captain America relives that scene of entering an elevator full of Hydra agents including Frank Grillo. And the filmmakers artfully dodge what we think will be another gangbang, with Cap softly saying, "Hail Hydra," which is a thing in comics. In another context, where writer Nick Spencer upended the Captain America universe in 2016 by making him a double agent. So Cap here walks away from the bukkake until he meets his taut-buttocked past self. War Machine Don Cheadle and Nebula land in the opening scene of Guardians of the Galaxy, where Peter Quill, Chris Pratt, is amusing himself singing into that small animal, "Come and Get Your Love," while stealing the original orb. Our hearts leap for joy. That movie, more than any other Marvel bombastodon, touched such a freewheeling, innocent spirit in our breasts. I like it when they touch my breasts. Rocket and Thor head to Asgard in the Dark World period, and the filmmakers do an artful thing. They tease us that Thor's ex-squeeze Jane, Natalie Portman, is important to the plot, but instead of reuniting Thor with Jane, Thor meets his mother, Frigga, regal Renner Russo, and they share a heartfelt moment that pulls Thor away from the edge of bathos and renews his faith in himself. This meeting, poignant though it is, seems like a workaround, as Portman obviously wants nothing to do with her silly role as a god's boo, so Rocket acquires Jane's ether/stone off-screen, while Thor finds his nads with his mother instead of his lover. On the strength of Hemsworth's fragility and redemption here, I'm leaking again. Thor also summons his hammer Mjolnir from this era, preciously smiling, "I'm still worthy." Now he's armed with Stormbreaker and Mjolnir, while the actual Thor from this era is probably wondering where the hell his hammer is f***ing off to in the few minutes it took before Cap must have arrived back here and given it back. But did he? It's time travel, who cares? F*** you. Hulk visits the Ancient One from Doctor Strange 2016 for the Time Stone, and is emasculated further when he is bested by a woman, Tilda Swinton, whom many consider to be a woman. She explains time streams for the few people who have not seen Back to the Future, and how the stone is so woven into the fabric of her very existence that she would never, ever, ever give it to Hulk. Then she gives it to Hulk. Not Ronan and Widow travel to Vormir, a planet from Infinity War. Remember that dismal dimension warded by Red Skull, Ross Marquand, where you had to sacrifice a loved one to get the stone? Now, did the Avengers already know this? Is that why they specifically sent these two mewling quims? So even though Barton and Natasha seem surprised when Skull tells them the rules, it's a gosh darn good thing they love each other, or we'd never get the stone.
Thank you, Deus Ex Machina.
On the ride there, Barton says to Natasha, "This is a long way from Budapest." Oh, for fun! Not that running gag. I can't wait for the Hawkeye Widow prequel that shows us what went down in Budapest that will rival the Solo movie for its irrelevance quotient. Before we can say, just fucking get it over with, Natasha and Barton grapple, not in that good way, for the right to die for all their past indecencies, and Barton returns to Avengers HQ with the stone probably heaviest in price. Again, I must commend the writing and performances. It would have been so easy for the writers to simply make the characters mouth "I love you" to each other with maudlin ease, but that is studiously avoided in lieu of deflective argument and tough love gestures. And Jeremy Renner, who never had much to do in these Avengers films, ups his screen time, poignancy, and his gravitas. Not to mention his mating potential ladies. That sleeve tat and that mohawk. Oh, he's a bad boy now. But don't weep, millennial Marvelites. There's a Black Widow film slated for release in 2021. So, dead, yeah, but starring an upcoming film with dolls on the assembly line ready for shipping. It's time travel, who cares? F you. Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet is left-handed because us lefties are evil, remember? And when Tony Ironstark Downey Man Jr. makes a gauntlet to house the Infinity Stones for Hulk, it's right-handed. And when Tony Ironstark Downey Man Jr. snaps in the grand finale, the stones all gather on his right glove. So in Endgame, the women get their moment. Captain Marvel, Wasp, Gamora, and no more disrespect for minorities, War Machine, Panther, Mantis. And the gays have their day, Korg, Meek, Ebony Maw. But when is someone going to give us lefties the respect we deserve? See, it's always something with this superstitious, ignorant, small-minded, xenophobic dung heap we call humanity. So, Hulk snaps, life restored, screams as his arm is destroyed by the stones. Question: why didn't Thor, who can withstand the power of a star, do the snapping? Answer: because Thor is fat, and fat people are not powerful. And Hulk only got burned because he is now a girly man intellectual. A She-Hulk? In this world where men can't be men anymore, see how the writers insidiously play off human prejudices to usurp these men's potency. Not through the malice of a villain, but through the power of whining SJWs, the greatest villains of all, to mankind. Comics Hulk and Comics Thor have performed deeds the likes of which qualifies them to take on Thanos alone. But there are so many powered beings here, the filmmakers can afford to heed the whining of social media and depower these two literal strongest Avengers. Birds may be chirping, Hawkeye's wife may be calling, but Nebula's Wi-Fi has alerted Thanos from before to the time heist, and the big blue ballsack teleports from 2012 to the present. Now here was a time twist no one saw coming. Thanos literally goes back to the future. And this time, Thanos wants to shred every atom of this universe and build it back from scratch with the stones. And the Avengers punch him. Although Brolin still retains a majestic quietude with Thanos, underplaying magnificently, he isn't the discerning philanthropist of the past, i.e. his future, i.e. our present, i.e. who cares. Now he's that one-dimensional villain who's only missing the evil laugh. It was never personal, but what I'm about to do to your stubborn, annoying planet, I'm gonna enjoy it very, very much. And the Avengers punch him for that as well. In 3-hour movie, can we really afford 45-minute battle scene in third act? Producers say, whatever it takes. Director asks, which supers you want in final fight? Producers say to director, like Gary Oldman in Leon,
Benny, bring me everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
Everyone!
Fanboys lose their shit. Scampering out of time holes come the whole catalog of Marvel merchandising properties, including Falcon, Panther, Okoye, Strange, Wong, Quill, Drax, Bucky, Wasp, and baby-faced Spider-Man Tom Holland, who disturbed so many with his pre-dust comment, Mr. Tony Ironstark Downey Man Jr., I don't feel so good. All alive again, thankfully, say Marvel. Doll sales were flagging. Captain Marvel is back and has cut her hair like a lesbian because, of course. Valkyrie Tessa Thompson is on her flying cow. Suddenly, Pepper in an Iron Woman suit. Really? It's the lamest shark jump ever, and I'm not even wondering how she had the time to gain the expertise to wield it as well as Tony Iron Stark Downey Man Jr. with a 5-year-old baby at home. No, what I'm wondering is, how the hell did she get a babysitter at such short notice? God, the lack of imagination in these fight scenes is more astounding than seeing every Marvel property on screen at the same time. Super-powered beings that can utilize magic and super speed and tactical firepower, just punching like knobs. And Thanos seems as powerful with or without the gauntlet. So what are the rules? Captain Marvel is supposedly the most powerful being in the MCU, and all she does is punch harder. She brings down Thanos' ship by flying through its hull, disintegrating it. Thor could have done that. She gets Thanos in a headlock. Any one of 20 supers could have done that. Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, Elizabeth Olsen, almost does Thanos in by herself, just by pushing her breasts together. Oh, and Cap wields Mjolnir, because that's a thing in the comics. As the X-Men movie series was the story of Wolverine, the Avengers movie series is the story of Tony Iron Stark Downey Man Jr., who comes full circle spiritually. This was the seed they planted way back in the first movie, when Cap chided Tony before he was a Holy Trinity that he would never lay down his life for anyone. And Tony Iron Stark Downey Man Jr. ends up laying down his life for, dare I? Everyone! Well, half of everyone. And who turns up at the funeral? Oh, yes please, Gary. Everyone! Fan service orgasm, and Tony Iron Stark Downey Man Jr. gives a final monologue via hologram. Something about loving Mystery Science Theater 3000. Falcon is bequeathed Cap's shield to become the new Captain America, because that's a thing in the comics. However, the issue is not whether Falcon should be Captain America, but whether he can, because he's not imbued with super soldier serum. A more logical choice would be super soldier Bucky, because that's a thing in the comics too. But I think the filmmakers are trying to comply with the Sokovia Accords, with Bucky a fugitive defined by those statutes. Speaking of which, General Ross, William Hurt, was at the funeral. Shouldn't he be arresting half the Avengers for being on active duty without the correct paperwork? Old Cap sits on a bench, having lived a full life. And we must ask, if old Cap is the Cap from this time, then what happened to the Cap from that time, who was frozen in the ice? I presume this Cap went back to a time after that Cap was frozen, so he could move in on that Cap's girl without himself being around to cockblock himself. So this means that Cap will be unfrozen after the war and still make it to the present as a young man, right? But isn't that Cap the one who gets unfrozen? This Cap the one who went back in time? So that would make this Cap that Cap, which doesn't make any sense at all. So I contacted Marvel for a comment on this time anomaly, and they were kind enough to reply with the explanation. It's time travel. Who cares? F you. Hey, thanks for being a movie maniac. You're always welcome to like, oh yes, click on that tiny hand, or comment, oh yes, I want to know what you think, and subscribe and share with all your friends, because if you don't, I don't know what I might do with this lettuce.